All debt is really, really bad, right? Well, not so fast. In fact, some debt can be really, really good. Meanwhile, yes, you are right, the majority of debt can be really, really bad and absolutely devastating for a lot of people. So that's what we want to talk about in this video is the differences between the two types of debt. The good debt that could be life-changing in a really good way, and the second kind of debt that could be really, really bad for you if used the wrong way. Now, here's the thing about debt. If you know how to use it to your advantage and you use it properly, it could be one of the best things that has ever possibly happened to you. Now, this is probably a statement that you probably thought you would never ever hear, that debt could possibly be one of the best things that has ever happened to you. But yes, it is true. If used properly, it could be absolutely life-changing for you in a really good way. So let's get into it and talk about this further. But of course, I need to preface this video by saying I am not in any way telling you that you should run out and get yourself a bunch of debt. No, please do not do that. Please, you gotta learn about this stuff. You need to know what you're doing, because even though debt can be really good, if used improperly, it could be really, really bad, really, really fast, okay? So we gotta talk through this. In fact, this may even be a couple video series, simply because this is a very important topic and we gotta get through all this. So anyway, let's get into it and talk about this. So, debt can actually be referred to as a few different names. However, it's all referred to and it's all meaning the exact same thing. So debt, of course, could be called debt, leverage, OPM, other people's money, or even in some instances, it could be called margin. Basically, it's all the exact same thing. It is debt with different fancy names. Essentially what debt is it's using somebody else's money to get you exactly what you want. Now, you could use debt for a variety of things. You could use debt to buy furniture. You could use debt to buy a car. You could use debt to buy a house. Again, it's all in different forms and names, right? Leverage, a loan, a mortgage, other people's money. You can go out and buy stocks with debt. Yes, it's called margin. Yes, all of these different names refer to the exact same thing, using somebody else's money to get whatever it is that you want. Now, let's talk about the different types of debt here, because this is something that's very important and you need to know the differences, because one is good and one is bad. Here's the thing. The good type of debt is taking debt or using leverage, other people's money, a mortgage, a loan, whatever it happens to be, whatever kind of name you want to put on it, by buying assets, buying cash flowing assets to acquire some kind of asset that's going to throw off cash flow each and every month, maybe quarterly, maybe semi-quarterly, or maybe semi-annually, whatever the duration happens to be. But basically, you use somebody else's money to acquire an asset that is going to pay you in the form of cash flow, right? That would be good debt. Now, I can elaborate on that a little bit further here in just a second. So let's talk about the bad kind of debt, and then we'll come back and talk about the good kind a little bit further. The bad kind of debt, consumer debt. Credit cards. These are bad types of debts. Personal loans, bad debt. Car loans, bad debt. Student loans, bad debt. It's all bad debt. It does absolutely nothing for you other than puts you in debt, right? You are indebted to the borrower until you pay off your liability. Now, mortgages. It can be a good type of debt and it can be a bad type of debt. Depends on what you do with that property. However, let me talk about consumer debt a little bit further. Now again, I get it. We're in a time right now where a lot of people are really struggling and you need to float your expenses on a credit card. I get it. So don't get me wrong. I'm not bashing anybody. I'm not saying anything's bad about it. I'm just trying to help you differentiate the two types of debt. Good debt versus bad debt. Now, consumer debt is what you want to avoid at all costs if you possibly can. But again, I have to say, I get it. A lot of people need to put their expenses on credit cards right now, or maybe some kind of personal loan or, credit line or whatever. I get it. You know what? It's totally understandable. It's completely acceptable, probably during this time. However, if you possibly can, the name of the game would be to pay off consumer debts as quickly as possible, get those things off the books, and run those balances down to zero. The reason being is you're paying an interest rate in many instances on that consumer debt, and you're getting absolutely nothing back in return on that, but rather the interest is just adding to the debt further and further, right? Now again, I do also understand most people can't just go out to a car dealership and throw down $10,000, $20,000, $40,000 in cash to buy a brand new car, right? Most people need to finance a car, right? That's, it's understandable. It's acceptable. Most people need to do that. But the name of the game should be get that thing paid down to zero as quickly as you possibly can, because the longer that you have it, the more the interest accrues, and the longer you're going to be paying on that thing, and ultimately adding to the debt with interest, right? However, so I think you probably understand consumer debt, right? Going out to the store, buying a bunch of things that you maybe need or whatever, and putting it on a credit card. Well, that's fine as long as you pay it off as quickly as possible. Consumer debt, that is a bad one. You got to stay away from consumer debt at all costs if you possibly can. Now, let's talk about the good kind of debt. The good kind of debt can be absolutely life-changing if used properly. Now, let's go back to the mortgage example that I talked about just a minute ago. Mortgages can be good and bad. Mortgages that are bad would be the type of mortgage that a person would get if they actually live in their house. Now, wait, what? That doesn't make any sense, right? You get a mortgage, of course, on a house that you want to live in, right? How is that a bad type of mortgage? Well, it's because there's debt, but yet it's not paying you anything. That mortgage and that house is a liability. Every single month, there's money coming out of your pocket to pay for the liabilities on that house. The mortgage, the interest on the mortgage, the taxes, the property taxes, the insurance, all the maintenance and repairs. That is all a liability every single month. You're paying for that. Meanwhile, you're not getting compensated in any possible way at all. However, how could a mortgage be actually good debt? Hey, that's a good question. Let's just say that you go out and buy a house and you get a mortgage on that property, and you decide to put renters in that house. Let's just say, for example, your mortgage is $1,000, which is PITI, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. $1,000 each and every month. You're coming out of pocket $1,000 to satisfy the mortgage and the liabilities on that property. However, let's just say that your tenant pays you $1,500 per month in rent. Well, you take in their $1,500 rent payment, you pay out your $1,000 toward your mortgage, which covers PITI, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, and there you have $500 of positive cash flow every single month that you get to put into your pocket. So therefore, you just took your mortgage from a liability on the house that you're possibly living in to all of a sudden, now you have a mortgage that is now a good type of debt, that is an asset. You have a cash flowing asset that is giving you positive cash flow every single month. Sound good, right? I mean, do you get the differences here now? Using leverage or a mortgage or debt, whatever you want to call it, to produce a cash flowing asset, that is the good type of debt. Now, once again, I'm not telling you to go out and buy a bunch of houses and get a whole bunch of mortgages and debt. No, I am not telling you that at all. Again, you got to research this stuff more. You need to understand what you are doing, because it could get really bad really fast if you don't understand what you're doing, and that you don't understand the numbers behind the deal, stuff like that. You need to know more about this stuff. So I'm just trying to give you like a really basic understanding of the two different types of debt that are out there right now. So here's another thing too. Think about any big business out there. I mean, basically any business you can think of. Any large corporation, smaller corporations, small businesses down on the street corner. Doesn't matter what it is. Basically every business, large or small, had to go into debt to establish their business, whatever it happens to be. There's not that many businesses out there that have started up and have gone from where they currently, started up to where they currently are without using debt. It's a way that they can expand rapidly, and it's a way that they can grow their business and reach the customers and start to get the money or the income, the revenue, the sales, whatever that is that they need to all of a sudden to build their business. So yeah, I mean, think about some of these multi-hundred-billion-dollar corporations out there or multi-trillion-dollar corporations out there. How did they get that big? Did they get that big by bootstrapping? No. They probably took on hundreds of billions of dollars of debt. In fact, they're probably still holding on to billions of dollars of debt. How do they do it? A lot of times they issue stock. That's how they do it. They issue stock on the public market, which generates billions upon billions of dollars, and that's how they kind of finance their projects. But a lot of times before a company can even go public, they need to take on debt, right? Maybe a construction loan or who knows what. There's all kinds of different debt out there. Maybe they go out to a venture firm, like a venture capital firm, and they generate a whole bunch of debt by selling off some of the equity of their business, by going to the venture firm and saying, hey, we need $1 billion. We'll give you 50% of our company, or whatever it happens to be. You probably see it on TV, right? Like Shark Tank, right? Some of these shows like that. Yeah, that's exactly what they're doing. Is they're selling off a portion of their equity of their company in order to get debt, right? A lot of times they need to get money and they exchange that in the form of equity and or debt in their company, right? So the name of the game is, if you can figure out some ways to use debt in your advantage, like the example that I gave you as far as the house, as in you get a mortgage on a property, you rent it out, you get all of your debts covered, and then you have positive cash flow, you now have a performing asset that is distributing positive cash flow to you each and every month. You have taken a liability and turned it into an asset. Yes, an asset is something that pays you every single month. Meanwhile, a liability is something like a car, a house that maybe you live in that you're paying on each and every month. Student loans are liabilities. Basically, anything that you need to continue paying for that you're not being compensated for on a monthly or weekly or quarterly basis, whatever it happens to be, that would then be a liability. So the name of the game would be get as many assets as you possibly can. Assets are something that will continue to pay you going forward and that will continue to cover all of your debts and expenses. That is an asset. So I hope this helps you out to understand a little bit better the differences between a couple of types of debts out there. Consumer debt, bad debt, right? We went through the list earlier, and of course, that list is much longer than I gave you right there, but I just wanted to give you some of the very common examples of consumer debt. By the way, consumer debt typically holds a very high interest rate. I mean, just for example, look at a credit card. Credit cards, I mean, what are they sitting at for interest rates? Anywhere between probably like 15 and 27 or even 30% interest. That's a massive amount of interest. I'd love to be able to collect that much interest, right? I mean, just think if you had money in the bank and you were receiving 15 to 30% of interest every single month. That'd be crazy, right? Your money would multiply so fast if you were getting that type of interest. There's not a chance. In the bank right now, you're lucky if you get maybe 0.1% interest, right? Yeah, it's pathetically low right now. But yeah, consumer debt, you want to stay away from that at all costs if you possibly can, and focus on the good types of debt, which allows you to acquire an asset and therefore get cash flow from that asset by using debt to use somebody else's money to acquire that asset and then turn it into a cash flowing asset, right? A cash flowing property, a cash flowing business, whatever it happens to be. So anyway, of course, we can have follow-up videos on this and talk about this a little bit further in more depth. But of course, I wanted to give you just a really basic understanding of the two types of debt that are out there, right? Investment type of debt where you can use it to acquire assets, and consumer debt, which is really, really bad, and avoid it at all costs if you possibly can. Anyway, make sure to hit the subscribe button right down below the video if you enjoyed this. And of course, I will continue having much more videos like this, talking about money, investing, passive income, multiple income streams, using debt and leverage to your advantage, as well as so many other things. So thanks again, everybody. Please go back and check out some of my other videos right here on the channel, as we have over 1,200 videos right here and probably many more hundreds and thousands of videos to come, of course, over the coming days, weeks, and months for sure. Thanks again, everybody. You're awesome. I truly appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next video.